China, an ancient civilization that has existed for nearly 4,000 years. They are responsible for some of the most important inventions ever conceived, such as the compass, gunpowder, paper, and printing. Yet, China is also the place where some of the most wicked emperors to ever rule were able to order and perform acts so brutal and savage they defy belief. Here are some of the worst examples. Gao Yang was an infamous alcoholic who sat on the throne of the Northern Qi from 529 to 559. Yang wasn't always a terrible drunk, starting his reign off fairly successfully by strengthening the Qi military's capabilities and reducing taxes. In fact, within a short period of time, the Northern Qi had become the top dog in China, commanding admiration from all. With his kingdom flourishing, Yang began to indulge more and more in his favorite pastime, as a way of celebrating the stability he had brought to the land. In the later stage of his life, excessive drinking transformed Yang from a respected statesman into a mad crackpot, whose depraved acts became a regular feature of court life. His lust for women compelled Yang to enter into an illicit affair with the sister of his wife, consort Xue. Overcome with jealousy, ordered her ex-lover, Gao Yue, a renowned Chinese prince, to commit suicide. However, Yang quickly tired of her and had her executed as well. In a drunken stupor and looking for a new instrument, he had her leg converted into a fiddle and her head paraded around his dining table. Because Yang loved to murder people when he was drunk, his Prime Minister Yang Yin ensured that there was always a pool of condemned prisoners conveniently available for him to kill. Yang could sometimes just be downright disrespectful to his elders, like his mother, Empress Do Yijelu, who he threatened to marry off to an old barbarian after a dispute. Yang was devastated he had upset his mother, promising to give up drinking for good. The deranged mama's boy would last only 10 days before going back to the bottle. Tophon Tima ascended to the Chinese throne in 1333, when he was only 13 years old, becoming the longest reigning Yuan monarch. Given his young age, it was only natural that Tima would grow up with a wacky sense of entitlement. He was perhaps influenced by his equally outlandish chancellor, Bayan, who suggested that all Chinese with the 5 most popular names should be executed, around 90% of the population. Tima was more interested in dressing up as a Buddhist monk and hosting exclusive sex parties on his palace grounds than ruling. He also shirked his responsibilities by constructing a great stage so he could watch dance performers at any hour of the day. When he was not indulging in pleasures of the flesh, Tima would hide himself away, dedicating his time to frivolous personal pursuits instead of the empire he was obliged to serve. Tima was a keen designer, overseeing the construction of an elaborate water clock and a pleasure boat for his personal lake at the time, as his realm was gripped with floods and epidemics during the 1340s. Tima's disinterest, however, would come back to haunt him when his capital at Dadu was captured in 1368 by the Chinese rebel Zhu Wanjiang, the founder of the Ming Dynasty. Tima was forced to flee his fairy tale life to Mongolia, dying more unpleasantly of diarrhea in 1370. Sun Hao, who governed China from 242 to 284, was not only an incompetent king, but also a vindictive maniac who killed anyone who disagreed with him. At first, Sun Hao took his new position as emperor seriously, impressing the populace by lessening taxes, regulating the behavior of many of his corrupt officials, and releasing many concubines. However, he soon grew bored of his duties, preferring to fill his days with wine, women, and execution orders. Hao was obsessed with turning the most beautiful women of his realm into his concubines, which he searched for among the families of his own officials. He declared that before any marriage, his mandarin should present their daughter to him, so he could decide whether to make her the latest member of his harem. Hao was also very protective of his female slaves, having one of his officials, Chen Shen, decapitated with a red-hot saw after he scolded the maid of one of the emperor's favorite concubines for stealing. He was also a frightening binge drinker who punished others for not sipping alcohol. If he caught any of his officials not drinking at one of his elaborate feasts, they usually lost their heads or were tossed into a river to be drowned. Sometimes Hao showed mercy and didn't kill them, choosing instead to horribly mutilate their faces while they were still alive. Hao reserved his murderous rage for his own kin as well. This was on full display when a rivalry erupted between his two sons, Sun He and Sun Ba. To break it up, he ordered Sun Ba to commit suicide and exiled Sun He to another province so that the dispute no longer annoyed him. Liu Yi's stint in high office was extremely short, lasting just 1 year in 364. He was an insecure monarch who constantly believed his royal relatives were plotting to overthrow him. As a result, his brief reign was characterized by paranoia-induced murderous outbursts against his extended family. He started off proceedings by forcing his younger brother and challenger for power, Liu Ziluan, to commit suicide before slaughtering his two heirs. Next, he butchered all of the men who had been loyal to his predecessor, Emperor Xiao. Zi was highly suspicious of his family, but also equally attracted to them, engaging in several incestuous relationships with his own bloodline. On one occasion, he forced his aunt, Liu Yingmei, to satisfy his lust, killing his own uncle, He Mai, after he conspired against his sick-minded nephew. He then kept his uncle's eyes as a memento, storing them in honey and naming them Pickled Ghost Eyes. Zi also enjoyed sharing a bed with his sister, Liu Shuyu, who was given dozens of handsome suitors by her brother after she complained how unfair it was that he had so many concubines. Indeed, open group sex was a common activity, and Zi took perverted pleasure in matching up the princesses of his court with his own attendants. Zi's crimes proved too much for his uncle Liu Yu, Prince of Zhongdang, who had him assassinated before he could cause any more harm. King Chou, who led the Shang dynasty from 1075 to 1046 BC, was another unpredictable tyrant who delighted in the pain and suffering of others, yet he is most well known for the tastiness of his royal gardens. Chou had vast pools of wine and forests of meat constructed in his palace grounds, so that he and his friends could drink the finest vintages with their hands and pick off the most delicious cuts from the trees whenever they wanted. Engorging himself on exquisite cuisine, Chou would pass the time in his canoe while red wine lapped around him, and by setting up bizarre and sadistic games. One of his favorites was to order his eunuchs and concubines to frolic naked in pairs until sunset, while allowing them to consume the delicious treats on offer in his garden of delights. When Chou got bored of this, he would choose a pair at random and beat them to a pulp. When he was finished with them, the victims would be thrown into a cart called the pulp trough. Chou also had another death ritual called the punishment of burning flesh with hot iron. Prisoners of all ranks, including high officials, were made to hug a hollow bronze cylinder heated by charcoal from the inside, leading to an agonizing death. His family were also unable to escape his psychopathic whims. When his uncle and illustrious sage Bijan criticized his actions, he had his chest opened to see if a wise man's heart was big. Wu Zetian was the only woman ever to be Empress of China. The events of her administration, which lasted from 690 to 705, illustrated she was just as crazy as the men. She first rose to supreme authority by smothering her own baby daughter and framing Empress Wang for the crime so she could marry the emperor herself. After drowning Wang in a pool of wine, she poisoned her husband, crowning herself Empress. She immediately got to work annihilating all her enemies, having a total of 15 family bloodlines extinguished in just 1 year. Many of them were even ordered to kill themselves in front of her. She was aided by her own terrifying secret police, who ran a network of informants to smoke out all possible opposition. When she wasn't destroying the aristocracy, she liked to enjoy the company of her own harem of male concubines. As an older woman, she allowed 2 of her favorite toy schoolboys to run a court later in her reign, transforming it into a bacchanalian playground of gambling, drinking, and open prostitution. She also hijacked Buddhist doctrine after her high priest, who she was sleeping with, declared she was the next reincarnation of Buddha. The only thing Wu Zetian didn't share in common with her male counterparts was the fact that she somehow survived her reign, abdicating peacefully in 705. The emperors of China were perhaps the most homicidal lunatics to ever live. Inheriting a royal court and realm so awed by their presence, they could make even their darkest fantasies a reality with the mere utterance of their voice or the click of a finger. They are a perfect example of the corrupting influence of unbridled power and the dark legacy of murder, incest, and hedonistic excess this usually leaves behind.